All hands are on deck as South Korea seeks a tariff deal with the Trump administration ahead of the August 1st deadline on the pause on country-specific tariffs. With more in Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Friday, July 25th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. So what is the latest with regard to tariff talks between South Korea and the US? To answer that question, I have Lee Ji-hoon with news agency Reuters here in the studio. Ji-hoon, welcome back.
Good evening.
I also have Professor Kim Jinill at Korea University with the pundit's take on trade talks between Seoul and Washington. Professor Kim, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Right, Ji-hoon, we will start here in the studio. Let's begin then with the cancellation of the 2+2 trade talks between South Korea and the US that were initially scheduled to take place on this Friday over in the US.
Yep. Until yesterday, South Korea had been planned to hold a so-called 2+2 meeting of finance ministers and trade ministers with the US. But that was canceled yesterday, just an hour before Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul was about to board a plane to Washington. The ministry said the meeting was canceled due to U.S. Treasury Secretary's scheduling conflict, and the ministry said the meeting will be rescheduled as soon as possible. Still, the cancellation raised worries in South Korea about a potential trade deal because there is only a week left until the August 1st deadline for trade deal. There were expectations the 2+2 meeting would be an opportunity to discuss broader topics for a framework agreement or a package deal. President Lee Jae-myung's administration has been actively seeking a trade deal since inauguration last month, with Trade Minister Yo Han-gu already visiting the U.S. 3 times for negotiations. But officials say most working-level discussions so far have been about non-tariff barriers, such as agricultural imports or digital service regulations. And experts say those topics were not enough, probably not enough to make an appeal to the US side. That was why South Korea was planning to bring an investment package of $100 billion compiled by South Korean major companies. And to propose the package to the U.S. during the 2+2 meeting. Although the 2+2 meeting was postponed, Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwan and Trade Minister Yo Han-gu, they still had a meeting with Commerce Secretary, U.S. Commerce Secretary yesterday, and they offered industrial cooperation in various sectors such as shipbuilding, semiconductors, and batteries, to reach a deal by the deadline of August 1st. In this, Industry Minister Kim is also having a separate meeting with U.S. Energy Secretary, which suggests that there could be energy cooperation included in a potential trade deal. National Security Advisor Ri Sung-rak said yesterday, after returning from his trip to the U.S., that South Korea's negotiations were at an important stage and near the end. So what happens next will be important to watch.
Right, for sure. Professor Kim, so South Korea, it's seeking a package deal that includes trade as well as defense. What are the prospects of such a deal in your view?
So as far as we are mentioned as South Korea, people always have the other Korea in mind. That's why you mentioned defense, right? So as Ji-hoon mentioned, we include energy as well as trade, but defense is another kind of the critical part of the package deal. And as he mentioned, as Ji-hoon mentioned, that the talks have been done with the Energy Secretary, and also our Mr. Ri Sung-rak's visit to Washington is also as important or even more important which means that the whole package deal is being discussed, and that cannot be separated, which is true, and that's basically the strengths and also the weakness of Korea. As Howard Rotning mentioned many times, U.S. knows that the Korea is in a hurry, right? He used some expletives to kind of describe the Korea situation, and of course they are absolutely correct. But how to make the best of it, at the best of situation, and after the negotiation is done, is finished with Japan, that's where we are, and that's the current situation among the three countries, unfortunately.
Right. Ji-hoon, as Professor Kim mentioned, the U.S. has sealed a tariff deal with neighboring Japan. Could you tell us a bit about that particular deal?
Yep. Earlier this week, the U.S. signed a trade deal with Japan, lowering tariffs to 15%. That includes reciprocal tariffs lowered to 15% from 25%. And more importantly, auto tariffs are lowered to 15% from 27.5%, without any caps on auto imports. In return, Japan promised an investment package of $550 billion. The package includes loans and guarantees from Japanese state-run banks and agencies to Japanese companies for investment in the United States, for supply chains in strategic sectors such as biopharmaceuticals or semiconductors. And according to the White House, the package means the U.S. will choose, for example, a manufacturing project and funded by Japan, and then leads to operating companies with 90% of profit going to the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump cheered the proposal, and his Treasury Secretary said it was an innovative financial mechanism which only Japan could offer to the United States. Other than that, Japan also said it will buy $8 billion of agricultural and other products from the United States and raise rice imports by 75% under the existing quota system, and loosen safety regulations for auto imports from the United States. Experts say Japan's trade deal will be a benchmark for South Korea because they are in a very similar situation. While there also will be pressure on South Korea to reach a deal that is similar to Japan's or no worse than Japan's, because South Korea and Japan compete with each other in various sectors, most notably the autos.
Right. Professor Kim, keeping in mind what Ji-hoon has just said then, what are the implications of the US-Japan tariff deal on a potential deal between South Korea and the US?
So South Korea is kind of on its nerves. It's in a very kind of difficult situation because Japan has already taken care of their deal. So traditionally, the three countries, I mean, the US, Japan, and Korea, they are kind of co-allies of the over the Pacific. And Trump moved first by declaring the Liberation Day. And then between South Korea and Japan, it's kind of the implicit alliance between the two countries. But that alliance has gotten broken a couple of days ago, effectively. So now Korea is on its own. And as Ji-hoon was describing the deal, and by mentioning Trump's innovative financial mechanism, so he will ask for another innovation to South Korea. And in the report, on TV report, I saw the Trump circling a number and changing the number of certain $100 billion to more dollars. That's what he cares, and that's how he is maybe serving his own constituents who elected him. Yeah. So in that sense, for Korea, I mean, I don't know what the exact meaning of the cancellation would be, but a few things we should think about. First, the cancellation is done not by a phone call, but by an email. That's what I was told. What does that mean? That doesn't make Korean Vice Prime Minister very happy. I don't know how many times Korea's minister or even Vice Prime Minister going to the Incheon airport and then come back. I don't know how many times it happened, and maybe not too many times. Yeah, and that's timed as 90 minutes before the flight, which is like when he arrives. And I bet that U.S. has enough information to know when the Mr. Koo is heading to the airport. That's, I mean, there are so many people at the Korean embassy in U.S. embassy in Seoul that know how exactly it's being done. And there are many reports about what the scheduling conflict is and exactly the whereabouts of the Mr. Trump and Mr. Besant. And they are very unsettling to Korea and then to me personally as well. And then that puts Korea in a different situation in the deal. But as we all know, Trump is very proud of being a good negotiator, and that we have to face. And the people who were mentioned by Ji-hoon, many ministers and the Blue House officials, that's their job. It's unfortunate that most of them have been appointed for several days or at the most a few weeks. But that's the start. And then I hope they reach as good a deal as they can. But as I said before, together with the defense, that's the weakness of Korea, but that could be the strength of Korea. And it will be determined at the negotiation table the last minute. And I hope for the best result.
You're right, I'm sure many do. And as you mentioned, Professor Kim, quite a number of pundits here in South Korea have voiced concern about the cancellation, the sudden cancellation, that is, of the 2+2 trade talks between the U.S. and South Korea. Ji-hoon, beyond this part of the world then, that is the East Asia, what is the latest with regard to tariff talks between the U.S. and other Asian partners?
Mm-hmm. So among Asian countries, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Japan have so far signed trade deals with the U.S. lowering tariffs, or at least framework agreements. The U.S. lowered tariffs on Vietnam to 20% from 46%, as Vietnam offered to open up its markets to U.S. products such as large engine cars. With Indonesia, the U.S. lowered tariffs to 19% from 32%. As Indonesia agreed to lower tariffs on U.S. products to 0% and agreed to buy agricultural products, energy products, and Boeing aircraft. In trade deals with those Southeast Asian countries, it was interesting the U.S. also introduced penalty tariff rates for transshipments, that is, Chinese goods being shipped to a third country and then to the United States. And most recently, the president of the Philippines visited the U.S. for a summit with President Trump and agreed to put zero tariff on U.S. products and increase imports of agricultural products and pharmaceuticals. President Trump, in return, agreed to lower tariffs on the Philippines slightly to 19% from 20%. Next up is China, which will have another round of trade talks next week. The US and China, they had been in a trade war with tariff on each other of more than 100%, but then they were able to reach a trade truce in mid-May, significantly lowering tariffs to 30% and 10% respectively. U.S. Treasury Secretary said the meeting will be held next week to discuss a potential extension to the deadline set for China, August 12, as they continue to work toward a trade deal. So many experts are saying, with this trade deals that have come out so far, there is an indication that South Korea's trade deal with the U.S. will be similar to the tariff rates that were introduced to other Asian countries. So it will be difficult for South Korea to be granted like zero tariffs or like a free trade agreement, but it will be somewhere between 15% and 20%.
Right, so tariff exemptions is going to be quite challenging for South Korea then. Professor Kim, pundits say Asia, it's a major manufacturing hub. That being said, how does the Trump administration's tariff campaign look to affect this economic reality, if you will?
Yeah, as you said, Asia is the hub, and Japan, Korea, China, and now Vietnam, those are, for the last 40 years, have been the manufacturing hub for the world. And when Trump did his campaign, his first campaign now, his third campaign or second successful campaign, he kind of emphasized more and more about MAGA, M-A-G-A, the Make America Great Again. And the essence is American manufacturing great again. That's what he is looking for, and that's how he got votes from the various parts of the United States. And these trade deals will bring the factories back for sure. That's his aim, and he will achieve it. And he, or even Biden, achieved some of those already before Trump, number two. And in that sense, factories will be there, but labor should be there as well. So there are kind of two parts. One is, will Americans or American workers, are they willing to work at the factories again after 40 years of hiatus, right? And second, if they want to, would it be easy for them to adjust or adapt to this environment? And Trump's plan would be successful, and I hope it will be successful because that would be a better ending for the world. Then, if these two assumptions will be met, then the world will move back to a brighter future. But whether both will happen, I'm not 100% sure. And depending on how much the U.S. succeeds in relocating the workers into this manufacturing web, the world could move into another uncharted and uncertain territories. And then nobody knows what those territories will be like. And then in that case, how American politics would move the country, U.S., and the world into another uncharted territory.
Professor Kim, staying with that sense of uncertainty, how severe do you suppose is that unknown territory for the global trade environment, keeping in mind, of course, Mr. Trump's tariff initiatives?
So for now, the tariff initiative is a huge uncertainty. And what I'm worrying as much or even more is, after this trade uncertainty is resolved, are we done? I hope we are done. And in that case, even if the world is at a lower point in terms of the average tariffs or the world GDP, even if we are worse off than before Trump 2.0, still that's what the world has done, or US, the election was dictating, and that we have to live with it. But will there be another wave of uncertainties, and then nobody knows how it, and that depends on politics, and sure, that's the democracy. And then, yeah, to be frank, our country have gone through various parts of democracy, and the US is going through its own territory here and there. And what happens after that, when the trade deals are all done, and several months after that, we'll see the next, the US election, the midterm election. And the result of it, I'm afraid, may put into another influx of the uncharted uncertainties into the world, and then everybody, or including our South Korean, should be ready to adapt. And the trade deal, and then the sudden cancellation by the U.S. Treasury Secretary kind of could be one shot of good dose. I hope it will turn out. So we have to be ready.
Right. And speaking about South Korea, Ji-hoon, what looks to be the impact of U.S. tariffs on Korea's economic growth going forward?
South Korea's economy grew 0.6% last quarter, data showed yesterday, and that was thanks to rebounding consumer spending after President Lee Ji-hoon voted to prioritize economic recovery. Surprisingly, exports also jumped 4.2% last quarter, which was the fastest in nearly 5 years. The Bank of Korea said it was better than expected thanks to robust demand for semiconductors. And while some companies were also front-loading their shipments ahead of tariff imposition. The Bank of Korea, however, says the impact of tariffs will be heavier in the third quarter and the fourth quarter because there still is uncertainty over South Korea's trade negotiations. The Bank of Korea said if South Korea signs a trade deal that is similar to Japan's, that will be marginally worse than the central bank's projection made in mid-May or late May, when it forecast exports to fall 0.1% this year and the economy to grow 0.8% this year.
Right, I see. All right, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. June, as always, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. Professor Kim, thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and do join us again same time next Monday for another panel session.